Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR is my Twitter handle, and Ryan Holmes is RHOLM22. Mr. Jetlag over here on your screen. Please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Also, leave a comment, all those things like that. Also, do the alarm so you know when we have something new. Ryan, it's been a minute, but we want to, kind of come through and talk about the draft and see what the Raiders did in this draft, how you felt about it, how we felt about it as a group. What are your thoughts about that? But first, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know what day it is. I think it's Wednesday. I know. I don't know where I'm at these days of the week. But this next month is going to be really crazy for me, but glad to be on and talking about the Raiders draft. The draft feels like it was a month ago, but it was a couple of weeks ago. So we haven't even had time to rehash it.
We haven't had to rehash it. And listen, we have a lot of time before the league gets back. So we'll get back to playing games or anything preseason even. So you might as well get acclimated to talking about the draft here. Let me just start, but before we get to the nuances part of it, let's just start with the actual picks themselves. Tyree Wilson, first pick. I like to kind of go over just real quick just to say overall he was drafted. Overall, people ranked him consensus. He was the fourth ranked in this draft by a lot of people. I kind of just did like an average of where everybody had him, and then the Raiders got him at 7, 6'6", 271, Texas Tech. Can scratch his ankle standing up. I mean, those arms are huge and long. And we'll see if he has that bend to get around the corner. What are your thoughts about this pick for the Raiders as they try to rebuild that defense?
It definitely makes sense considering where they picked in the draft and who was available when they came up at 7. Obviously, Devin Weatherspoon wasn't there. They're looking for an impact defender. Obviously, they weren't in love with any of the quarterbacks or the quarterback that got to them at that point, which was Levis, who fell to the second round. But I think Tyree Wilson's going to be a starter on this team. I think they're going to start him inside in the 3-4 as a defensive end, basically playing over the tackle or kind of in that B gap where he can line up as a 4-eye, and he's versatile. So you can line him up inside of Max Crosby or inside of Chandler Jones early. He's a really good run defender with size and physicality. Then you can move him outside on passing downs to give a break to one of those two guys. Maybe he rotates on passing downs with Chandler Jones, but this guy's going to play almost, I'd say 70, 80% of the snaps. So I don't look at him strictly as a backup, outside 3-4 linebacker. I think he's going to end up playing a lot of down defensive end with his hand in the dirt and then sliding out in passing situations. Then obviously the ability to get him on the field on third down and move him around with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. I think all three of them are going to be in the nickel. You can play him as a nickel with his hand down on the ground. So I think it's the versatility. The only caution I have is the Liz Frank injury. As long as the doctor signed off on it, they don't think it's a long-term issue. Then it's a good pick. It's a good pick for what they want to do defensively. Personally, I probably would have leaned corner and gone with Gonzalez, but he fell to 17. But it makes a lot of sense. I don't think you're getting, a 15 sack guy who's just going to be a terror off the edge. I think this is more of kind of a guy that's going to stop the run, be physical. He's going to develop into a better pass rusher over the next couple of years. I don't think he takes the world by storm with sack numbers his first year, but I think as he gets into year 2, year 3, and as he develops, he can be a guy that can get you 10 or 12. But it's the physicality and the ability to be a run stopper at multiple positions along the front. That's where the value comes from.
So, and we'll talk a little bit about the Peter King thing, but Peter King talked about how Josh McDaniels briefed him before he talked to the media and said the first thing he talked about with him was, don't make this, if you talk about your foot a lot, then they're gonna make this whole thing about your foot. He talked about his foot anyway. It's because he said he'll be ready for training camp. But that's the only thing that I worry about is the foot injury. And that's the only way. I mean, I was when the draft board started coming down, and then I saw Jalen Carter available, and like he's kind of that unicorn. They just don't build people like that very often. I understand why they wouldn't do it. But I erased that from my mind because I know I'm not making the pick. They're making the pick. I think he's a good player. I don't think he is Cleveland Farrell 2.0. Raider Nation said, he's way more productive, way more,
Way more physical.
way more physical. Can get to the quarterback. Had one of the top pressure rates in FBS football last year. But for me, it would be the foot. To me, it would be like, hey, are you a Jalen Carter a risk taker or not? They weren't, and he can. I do picture a third down package where like you said, where Wilson's on the field with Chandler Jones, with Max Crosby, and any pass rush this defense can get would be or they force a quick check down or something, because we all know where the secondary is, will definitely help the Raiders defense.
Yeah, and I think obviously they have the replacement for Chandler Jones when he departs next year once he's a free agent. So they already have that in house. They can go out and get another pass rusher next year and kind of keep a three-headed monster. But I would have taken Wilson over Carter, knowing everything about the character off the field, all the issues that Carter had mixed in with Vegas and what happened with Henry Ruggs. I wouldn't have taken the risk at that point of the draft, so I completely understand that. I probably would have leaned corner, but they obviously wanted to rebuild the trenches, and Tyree Wilson was the best player on the board to do what they wanted. You mentioned the Peter King article. Had they done the trade and traded down to 12 and taken Harrison, this would be a totally different conversation because I would not have behind that. But I do support the Tyree Wilson draft pick.
Or if they they were actually one pick away from the guy who they really wanted was the offensive lineman from Ohio State. So, but that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But listen, good pick, solid pick. Third down. Hopefully they can be terrors going after the quarterback. We'll have to see if when he does play the edge, because does he have that bend to get around the corner? Is he going to be using power? What's his quote unquote pass rush plan when the first move isn't working? Those things you have to those things. And also I did see a good on the 33rd team. I think Chuck Pagano was he did a little video on him talking about his ability to drop in coverage at times too. So as well. So if you want to do some things like that in the flats, you can do that with him as well. So I don't have besides the foot, I don't really have an issue with it. With the pick at all. I think he's a really good player. I think everybody had him in the top 10. So nobody had to go look for their scorecard to see who the hell Damon Arnett was or anybody like that. They just knew who this guy was, and they were able to he kind of fits right into what they want to do. And when you look at some of the things with the defensive line did in New York with Patrick Graham, I mean, this should be a situation where they should be able to get some pass rush to be able to be productive here.
Yeah, I think, like I said initially, I think he lines up inside on third downs as long as Chandler Jones is healthy and Max Crosby. The power guards aren't going to be able to handle the inside just physically with the power, so he's not going to need that elite bend. He's just going to overpower those guys, and then with his wingspan next to Max Crosby, there's going to be a lot of tip passes at the line of scrimmage. So there's a real easy path to get a lot of production out of this guy if he's 100% healthy going into the season.
That's true. And tip passes, it's no pass interference on tip passes at the line of scrimmage. So, hopefully that continues for the Raiders. So, second pick, and I want to get to the point where get through the first two guys, because the first two guys were solid picks, I think, for the Raiders, and then we have maybe some differing opinions about what Raider Nation wanted the rest of this draft. But so we had Michael Mayer, the tight end. You kind of saw it coming. Once Laporta went off the board, you kind of saw that, the tight end, and this is a very talented tight end group coming in, Kincaid, Laporta, Musgrave, and Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer is kind of the guy they want. They want a guy who they don't got to take off the field, a guy who can play. He's probably might have the biggest impact on that early on for the Raiders, because he's just going to be his ability to block, be able to catch seam passes, all those things that we've seen. He's not Gronk. He's not baby Gronk. I don't want to even hear that part of it because Gronk is one of the all-time greatest tight ends ever. I'll just say this: like he has an opportunity to just jump right in and be able to make an impact on this team, especially when you look at Garoppolo's work when he worked with George Kittle in San Francisco.
Yeah, this to me is the best all-around tight end of the draft. He can block. You can keep him in line. You can flex him out. He can win in the short to intermediate area one-on-one just with his physicality. This is not the guy you're going to line up completely outside and just have him try to win one-on-one. You're going to move him into the slot, but most of his production would be in line between the numbers against linebackers where he's just going to win in the 5 to 10 yard area. He's not going to be winning 20, 30 yards down the field, but this is the kind of tight end McDaniels wants in this offense. Like you said, he doesn't have to come off the field. He can block in the running game, be an extra lineman. And then he's got really good hands. He can make contested catches. And this is a key with Jimmy Garoppolo. You got to think, who's the quarterback? He needs a safety valve over the middle that he can get the ball to quickly like he had. I'm not saying he's George Kittle, but a guy that he can get the ball to quickly when things break down if Devontae's not winning outside. I think he pairs well with Devontae. The question is, he's going to be taking up a lot of that stuff over the middle of the field between the numbers. How does that interact with the slot receivers on this team? Because they're going to kind of be in the same area. But long term, this guy's going to be Raider Nation love this guy. He's going to be a 10-year starter. He's going to make a couple of Pro Bowls, I would think, during his career. And this is a pick we're going to look back and it's going to be a great pick. He's going to be probably the best tight end when all's said and done. The Raiders have had in quite a time.
Yeah, I know. I know. We've talked about the Waller had
the red zone.
Waller had a big year, but then kind of got injuries derailed him a little bit. And then in the red zone, he should immediately be a red zone threat. You can't get like safeties, corners, linebackers. Once he gets his position, you can't physically get through him. Like he's just boxing you out like a basketball player, like a power forward. So they should be able to do that. Should be able to get him the ball, and like they've made a living on getting the ball to the tight end, right? So the play caller. So I definitely like that. He was the 19th pick, a 19th player ranked overall, and the Raiders got him at 35. So that looks like a win for the Raiders there. Anything else on Michael Mayer?
Yeah, 12 personnel. You're going to see a lot of it this year. You're going to see a lot of them coming out with O.J. Howard and Austin Hooper on one side, Michael Mayer on the other. You could do a wing. You can put both on the same side. But when they come out with Howard and Mayer, they are going to run the ball and they're going to be physical. So I think this really helps the running game because now they have two blocking tight ends to go along with what Josh McDaniels wants to do. And Mayer's going to win. He's going to win vertically off of play action, which they're going to do. They're going to suck the linebackers in, then he can get behind them. So I think it's a great pick for the team. The first two picks, I'm completely on board. I understand them. I do like both those picks.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, they're physically imposing. They look like they look like remember the old school Raiders when they get off the bus. Well, that's what this looks like. I mean, those first two guys. When those first two guys got off the bus, they look like big time football players. So Wilson and Mayer,
and they're productive.
And they're productive. They don't. Yeah, they're not just. Yeah, they're not like this.
They're not Sam Williams.
They're not Sam. That's a good. That's
we
true.
love you, Sam.
We love you, Sam. That's a good one. So this player, the next player in the third round was Brian Young. He was the 114th ranked player overall by I just did an average of like the three publications, and then he was drafted 70th overall. The Raiders passed on some players here to get him. Another interior guy here, and we want to see. Obviously, the Raiders have not had. Can we mention the last time they had a guy who can pressure from up the middle? I don't remember last.
Chester McLaughlin.
That's McLaughlin, Roger Coleman. I have no idea. Roger Coleman's my favorite guy. I love Roger Coleman. But they just don't have any pressure. Also, this could be an indictment of the two guys they drafted last year, like trying to light a fire under them too, as well, saying, hey, like if you guys want to actually play, you better start playing because we're not gonna stop drafting defensive linemen. Or defensive tackles, if you will. Were you still like first initial response and then the research response? Because I know we also have that initial response of like, okay, wait a minute, and then we had that response of like, okay, let's do some due diligence and see what he was about.
Yeah, initial response was it was a little early, I thought,
Yeah.
for him.
Me too.
But the more you look at his tape, the more you read about him, this guy's going to fit in with what the Raiders are. This guy's not going to get to the quarterback at a high rate. He's not going to get you 6 to 8 sacks. But I think he's going to start. I think he's going to start at that other defensive end position opposite of Tyree Wilson. So I'm going to say they're both going to start as ends in a 3-4 along a 5-man front. He's really good against the run. He can locate the ball. He can disengage. He can take up blockers. So his value is going to be on early downs, where the Raiders really didn't have that kind of guy on the roster. And they have a bunch. He's going to beat out Jerry Tillery for snaps on early downs for sure. He's going to beat out Matthew Butler. And then I would say the nose tackle is going to come down to either Farrell or Jenkins, who they signed as a free agent. But I think as a 3-4 defensive end, Byron Young's going to fit right into that just because of his size and strength. You can't move him off the ball. Now, is he going to give you some pass rush? He's going to give you a little bit. So he might be able to, every once in a while slide in, play a 3 technique as a defensive tackle in the nickel. He'll probably rotate with some of those pass rushers. On obvious pass rushing downs, he probably won't be on the field. It'll be Tillery or Butler or one of those guys. But think on first and second down, how he's going to fit within the defense. Now, you have to think, if you're running the ball against the Raiders, Chandler Jones is a good run defender. Tyree Wilson's a good run defender. Max Crosby's an elite run defender. And now you're adding Byron Young, who's a really good run defender as well. If they can get any production out of the nose tackle, this defensive line is going to be hard to handle in the run game on early down. So I think the pick makes a lot of sense. And then you factor in he was in the Senior Bowl. The Raiders, Patrick Graham had his hands on him. He got to see how he learned, how he took in information, what kind of teammate he is, how he is in the locker room. So this is going to be more of a foundational glue pick, a guy who's going to be a good player on the roster. He's not going to be a superstar. He's not going to stand out every week. He's not going to get to the quarterback and cause a ton of turnovers. But you need these kind of guys on your roster, so it makes sense. Would he have been there at 100? Maybe. He probably would have been there at 100. But if this is your guy and you want to get him, taking him 30 picks before that into the third round, I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people were just looking at, like, hey, that's a little bit early for him. But listen, they had a chance to kind of talk to him and do all the research hands on with Patrick Graham. So hopefully that continues